Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your world champion here, and that's right, we are back with some awesome weekly content. Apologies for the bit of a mess there with consistency and all that, but hey, we're here, we're back, and we're talking about Mushoku Tensei. Now, this is a series that I got into about a year ago. I watched the first season of the anime, the second season dropped, and I finished that, earlier this year, and my friend Eden's, he's been on me constantly so much about reading the light novel, and unfortunately I don't really have a lot of time to put into reading, but thank you Spotify for giving me the official audiobook version of Mushoku Tensei. So I've been listening in on all this, and currently I'm partway through volume 4, and I thought to myself, you know what, I kind of want to talk about it. I kind of want to talk about, my perspective going into some of these, and eventually when I get to the new stuff, like beyond season 2, I kind of want to talk about it. So join me on this journey, on this excursion through Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation. I'm just going to be talking your butts off about these volumes as I finish them, and I'll be releasing videos, kind of going into what I took away from them. We might get super into detail, we might not, I don't know, probably not too much detail going into like these earlier volumes, because like I did watch the anime and all that, so there might be a few things here and there that were added from the audiobook novelization of it. So let's just kind of dive right in. We're going to talk about volume 1 right now, which again starts everything. Now, we get this prologue here, and it goes more into detail of Rudius's previous life as this 34-year-old jobless piece of shit. Like, let's be honest, Rudy is a piece of shit, especially his 34-year-old self. I mean, this guy became like a fat slob. He became this hermit in a way, just living inside of his house and never leaving and all that. Now, there is reason behind that, because he was bullied in the high school that he went to. And I mean, the thing is, I love how much detail we get in this, from knowing that he was somebody that had a lot of promise, and he wanted to do well, but like he got into a hobby with computers and all that, and that just led to him kind of not doing well in school. So now he's in a horrible high school, and he mouthed off to the wrong people and got bullied to the point where he just felt like he couldn't go back to the school. So that was him. He spent like years, like no job, just being just a horrible slob, piece of crap to his own family. Like, Rudy's not a good guy at the beginning of all this. But when we get to chapter 1, after the end of the prologue where he saves some kids from getting hit by a truck, he gets reincarnated into like this new fantasy world where like there's magic, there's swordsmanship and all this stuff, and he's realizing, I actually have a second chance at life. And he starts deciding, okay, I'm going to make the best of this. I'm going to go forward and do more with this life than I did in my previous life, because he has the memories of his previous life. Now, whether or not reincarnation is a thing, I mean, that's something for religious people to really spout on about and all that. But like in the context of the novel, he remembers everything about his previous life, which kind of gives him the step ahead in a lot of aspects when it comes to like reading, math, and eventually spellcasting. And we get into that just in some of the later chapters and all that. So yeah, chapter 1 is really just like his awakening into this new world and discovering, okay, I'm in this new place, and he's trying to make sense of it, trying to get the lay of the land and all that. He sees like his dad practicing swordplay outside. He finds a spell book and all that, notices that his mom heals him after like he fell off a chair and all that. So like there's magic and fantasy in this world, and that's kind of all up his alley, because he's somebody that's played a lot of RPGs. He's gone around being like, okay, I'm gonna do this dating sim and all that to like understand, or quote unquote understand, the human mind and all that. So as we go through this first volume, we see his growth and just how well off he can be in this new life. Now, chapter 2 kind of goes into a backstory of the maid here, who's named Lilia, obviously, and she was somebody that actually knew Rudius's dad, Paul, before working for them. So her whole deal is she was basically going to be a bodyguard maid type of thing, and one day she got injured, a leg injury that kind of put her out of action, and now she can really just be a maid. Like, she had to give up the sword and all that, but she goes for work, finding work, and she notices Paul's looking for a maid and just like a housekeeper and all that stuff, and she knows Paul. And I love how we get into detail of like their relationship before all this, because like they had done some things. Like Paul's also a piece of shit. Like, Rudy's new dad is also a piece of shit in a way, because like he did force himself on Lilia, but she does say in the novel, it's just like, okay, well, I didn't really fight him. I just kind of let it happen, and it was good. So I mean, Paul Paul was able to get away with it because he's just that good at sex. So that's cool, I guess. All right, fine, neat. But like, she feels like she can use that as blackmail to get the job with him, but no, she was able to get it fine, and everything's happy-go-lucky. But like, her big thing is she is terrified of Rudy, because in her experience, she had to deal with a kid that was possessed by a demon and all that was acting just like Rudy was when he was born, like not even crying, barely like doing anything like actively, or like not necessarily actively, just like not acting like a normal kid really. So this kind of terrified her, and to the point where like it took a while for her to like warm up to Rudy, like years almost, until like he was in Paul's study and just studying a book of magic, and then she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna back off a little bit. And then we have another incident later on that she basically just worships Rudy at that point, just like, okay, you know what, I'm here for life with this kid. So that was kind of cool with chapter 2, kind of diving into Lilia's whole story. Chapter 3, it takes place 2 years later, so like Rudy's already learned how to walk and learned, not really how to speak, but he's been learning the language of the world. And this is when he kind of dives into magic. He finds his spell book, he recites one of the incantations in it, which is like a water ball incantation, and he starts to kind of learn about the magic system in this world. Because like some of the books he has are saying, oh, well, your magic reserves are given to you by birth. And like he's kind of piecing together, okay, if I work more, if I just like exhaust my magical power each and every day, I can build upon that. So like, it's kind of like that RPG logic where it's like, okay, if I just keep doing this, like keep getting used to this strain on my body and my magical power, eventually I'll get so used to it that it's just gonna be second nature to me. So that's basically like chapter 3. Like he's using this magic, and he learns that he doesn't really have to do these incantations, because like he knows how water works. Like this is where his experience with his previous life comes into play so well, because it's like, okay, I know how water works, I know how air works, I know how fire works. Like I have a basic knowledge of the science behind that, because this world doesn't have science, they have magic and all that, which is it's cool. Like magic's cool, but like nobody's going around to their stoves and just heating them up with magic. Like magic's strictly used not as like a tool, like everyday tool like this. It's used, if you need to use magic on anything. So again, that's kind of cool, and he decides again to practice every day, exhausting his magic power, all that stuff. Chapter 4, about a year later, this keeps going on, and Rudy ends up blowing a hole through their house, because like he's trying to test like the limits of the power and all that, and like how he can control everything. And this alerts like Lilia, Zenith, his mom, and Paul. And Zenith she is over the moon happy and ecstatic with this, like, oh, you're a magician, this is great. And Paul's just like, oh, I wanted you to be a swordsman, dude. I wanted you to take up the sword so you could, be an awesome badass swordsman. But they end up being like, okay, we can't provide the magic training that you would need as a kid, so let's hire a tutor. And we meet Roxy. She's cool. I really dig Roxy, especially like later on, like season 2 stuff. So she comes in, she's gonna be Rudy's tutor going forward, and she teaches him a lot of stuff, mainly like magic stuff, but like they do kind of touch on some arithmetic, but mainly magic, and mainly the rest of the world. Like she gives him like tons of lessons on like the demons, because like we find out Roxy's a demon, we get the legend of the Superds and all that. It's stuff that the anime didn't really focus on, and I'm so glad that the novel had it, because like it's just those little things that just build up your world and make it just a little bit more than it should be. Like, again, chapter 3 with Rudy, you know, talking internally about like his magic reserves and like testing everything, like that was intriguing to me. And that's like mundane shit. Like, but I was sitting there like in my car because, you know, I'm listening to this during my commute. I'm just sitting there like, wow, this is holding my attention. Like, am I getting older? Am I like finally understanding what it means to like go beyond just the fightings and all that? Like, this was just really cool. I really digged it. And after a year of Roxy's training, Rudy ends up becoming an advanced rank magician. So hey, that's cool, that's neat, that's excellent. Chapter 5 comes around and Rudy turns 5. This is where we get a little bit more lore from the world of like, okay, you only really celebrate your 5th and 10th birthdays and your 15th. After that, screw your birthday. Nobody gives a shit about your birthday after that. So Rudy turns 5. He receives like a sword from his dad. Like, he receives 2 swords, a practice sword and a real sword. So cool, good on you, Dad. From Zenith, he gets like this botanical encyclopedia. So that's kind of cool. You know, he can go around just learning about the world. That's mainly the thing here with Rudy, is like he's learning about the world and we're learning with him, which is it's so cool. I love when we have a character like that like we actually focus on with when it comes to learning about the world. And again, it's just good world building in my eyes. And of course, he gets a wand from Roxy to help with his magic and all that. And I love too how this chapter kind of showed us what others kind of think of Rudy, and they even have like these conversations with Rudy. And in later chapters, we get introspection from some of these people, like Paul, for example. Like Paul here, he knows that Rudy wants to do the sword. It's one of those things that's like, I know you want to do this, son, but you're so good at this other thing. So, and I love how they put it here too. Like, Rudy has an aptitude in magic because he's good at that, but he has a passion for the sword. Like, he is a warrior at heart and he wants to be that. And they come up with a good schedule where it's like, okay, he practices magic in the morning and swordplay in the afternoon. Great, cool, awesome, neat, fan flippin' tasket. But like, he keeps getting better and better, but there is a time where he does plateau, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. Chapter 6, though, this is during Roxy taking Rudy out to do his graduation ceremony. And we gotta start to see here now just what Roxy was up to. She was going around the village trying to make a better name for herself and just trying to like be part of the community. And like, we see all the people looking at Roxy and saying, oh, hey Roxy, how you doing, Roxy? The best part too with all this is Rudy, he feels like everybody's staring at him and looking at him. It just ties in well with how he was beforehand. Like, again, he was a shut-in before all this, before he died and was reincarnated and all that. He was a 34-year-old jobless shut-in, and he was mocked for just being who he was, and that's what led to him being a shut-in. So like, him being out now in the world, because he never really even left his house much before now, but he's out here with Roxy, and there's a moment here where like he realizes that nobody's really looking at him. They're not looking and laughing at him, they're just looking at Roxy. And I mean, they're not laughing at Roxy either, because again, they're saying, oh, hey Roxy, how you doing? Oh, thanks for the crop help the other day. He's seeing such a good part of the world right now, and it's really good, because like, this is one of those big moments for him where it's like, you know, he starts to really appreciate Roxy for what she's been doing for him, which is getting him out into the world. And it's so good, because like, it's relatable. Like, and that's one thing about Rudy. He okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ignorant children of the Isles, I'm 33 years old. Okay, I'm around the age that Rudy is mentally. There's a lot of stuff in here that I can relate to, especially in my own situation and all that. So Rudy, you're a little too relatable for me. You know, but I like that in this, because like, I can relate to him and see where he struggles and like why he thinks certain ways and why he does certain things, because it's like, okay, yeah, I do have a new life, I have a new way of going about things, I have another chance to not fuck up. And the most important thing of all this. And we even get a little bit more with like Rudy's graduation ceremony here, where he has to cast a water saint spell known as cumulonimbus, making a storm and all that. But again, with his knowledge of science and weather, I mean, he knows how to keep a cloud going and how to keep the rain going instead of like standing there for an hour and all that. So he passes with flying colors. And Roxy ends up leaving then because Rudy he has nothing else to learn from her. So she leaves him a pendant and she goes about her day. And yeah, we move on with life as Rudy does, because now that he's no longer afraid to go outside, he starts going out and try to like see the world for what it is and see if he can make any friends. And he does make a friend in the name of Sylph. Now, those of us who know, we know, but just seeing how he is with meeting Sylphie for the first time. Yes, I said Sylphie. It's Sylphie. Let's just get that out of the way. It's a girl, all right? We know about the time where, like, he basically forced her to strip and all that, and that's where he finds out he's a girl. And, like, that's even just awkward in its own right in the novel, just because of just how Rudy's describing everything. Like, and that might be my one nitpick on just the novel as a whole. Just whenever we get those moments of Rudy being like, oh, you'll grow into a great girl, it's just like, I don't know about that, Rudy, but I can let that slide with the other shit, because like he's not really forcing himself on them. He's just making a comment for later on down the road. I'm trying not to excuse it, but I'm just gonna move on. We're gonna move on because he saves Sylphie from these bullies and they start hitting it off, as friends. And he starts teaching Sylphie magic, more importantly, incantationless magic, which is kind of cool. This is the best way for him to kind of retain his knowledge, by teaching. So, hey, that's cool. That's neat. Word. Sylphie's gonna learn incantationless magic, and hopefully I can learn how to say incantationless. But what's really cool here is we get this moment with Paul and Rudy, where when Rudy comes back from the day, Paul starts chastising him about beating up a kid, because the kid's mom came in and she's just like, your son hit my kid, and Paul's just like, huh, okay. And instead of hearing Rudy out, like, he thinks he's making excuses, and to the point where he smacks Rudy. They have this confrontation, and Rudy's able to de-escalate and be like, look, you're not letting me say my side. Like, you're taking their side immediately because of some unknown reason that I don't know. Like, you're just being a dick, Dad. But I love this because we get Paul's side of it. And this is what I've been waiting for since starting this audiobook series. That's one thing I thought was missing from the anime, is just everybody else's perspectives. And when I was told, hey, we do get their perspectives, it's like, oh, that intrigues me. Because with Paul, it's like, okay, he wasn't really mad at Rudy for fighting, because, hey, kids get into fights all the time. What he's concerned about is the fact that Rudy won't know how to hold back, because he's a Saint tier magician and all that. So it's just like, oh, he could just whip out a Saint tier spell and just knock out these bullies to no end and all that. So it's like, okay, I need to chastise him so he knows not to use his full power. And it kind of turns back on him, because like he hits Rudy for something that like he was chastising Rudy for. And so they do end up having the talk. They do end up, hearing each other out and all that. But like, it's just so good to see other people's perspective on things like this. So I thought that was kind of cool. But that's basically chapter 7 and 8 in a nutshell. I do like 2 with like chapter 8, because that's the chapter where Rudy strips Sylphie and finds out she's a girl and all that. Like, I like when we get Paul's perspective on that too, because he's just like, okay, this is different from when he was beating up the bullies. He knows he did wrong, and he's not going back on that. He's just like, I need to apologize and all that. So I like that a lot. But like, we also start getting more and more hints about how like him, like even him now, like we had mentioned Lilia earlier, who was just like kind of afraid of Rudy at first, but now she's just kind of uneasy with him. Paul's also a little uneasy, because it's like, okay, he's a lot more mature for his age, because like at this point Rudy is about 6 or 7, so it's like, dude, you're acting like a 20-year-old right now. Like, chill, don't grow up so quick. But then we get to chapter 9. Oh, chapter 9. So it's titled Family Meeting, and basically, the gist of this chapter is, hey, look, Zenith's pregnant again. Whoa, let's have a party. Lily is also pregnant. Now you may think, okay, cool, the maid is pregnant. Great, awesome. She met a cool dude and they hit it off well and they got, down and funky and all that. But the person that got down and funky with Lilia was Paul. And I like too, again, we dive into it, why that was a thing. Because again, they had a thing in the past and she enjoyed it. Zenith definitely enjoys it because freaking Lilia has to hear that every night. And that's why Lilia was coming on to Paul. It was kind of her fault in a way. Because she kept hearing Paul and Zenith just go to town on each other every single freaking night. Which, I mean, from seeing pictures of Zenith, I don't blame you, Paul. I don't at all, dude. So he's in trouble right now because he's got 2 pregnant women now and they don't know what to do. And this is the moment that Lilia becomes indebted for life for Rudy, because Rudy basically throws Paul under the bus and basically calls Paul a piece of shit, how he went towards Lilia and all that, and Lilia just couldn't help it and all that stuff. But it's where's Lilia gonna go with this baby? And she's saying, oh, I could go home, but that trip is a couple months or whatever, and it's a dangerous trip even for just normal people. So it's why would a pregnant woman or a woman with a newborn go immediately over there? No, stay here. You're gonna stay here because we're gonna be fine. And I like too, later on we get in this chapter where Rudy goes to Zenith and is just hey, that stuff I said about Dad, that stuff I said about Paul wasn't really true. He didn't come on to her. I just wanted to say that because I didn't want her to go. And Zenith does believe Rudy. She's yeah, I know. Because, and I love this too, because we get this in the bonus chapter too about Zenith, where she's I know Paul. I know the kind of guy Paul is. And so I knew this day was gonna happen. I just didn't know when, and I had to prepare myself for it. So the fact she's kind of cool with it is interesting in its own right, especially knowing her background and all that in the Millis continent and being a follower of Millis and all that. It's basically Christianity with that, with monogamy and all that stuff. But it's she was accepting of him. She was accepting of Lilia because again, their relationship ended up becoming basically sisters in this aspect, where they were so close together that they knew that they could just rely on each other through all this. And it's just so good to get just that context and just again, get that side of the story too. So moving on to chapter 10, this is where we see that Rudy is noticing that he's kind of plateaued a bit. He's not getting much better at the sword, and his magical skills really aren't getting too better. Because again, he's reached that limit where it's okay, my basic scientific knowledge from my previous life got me so far with the incantation list shit, but now that Sylphie's better at magic, I'm starting to look like just a normie here. I gotta do something, I gotta achieve and all that. And he ends up getting a letter from Roxy being hey, I now know kingly level spells, I'm now tutoring this stuck-up prince and all that. But she had recommended her school that she went to for magic, the Renoa School of Magic. And this gives Rudy the idea of going to school there. But he doesn't want to go alone because he wants to take Sylphie with him. And I mean, the main part with that is because Sylphie doesn't want Rudy to leave and all that. So she's very dependent on him, and to the point where she doesn't even want him going adventuring. Paul even tried to talk to Rudy about his future and what he could do. And I mean, he mentioned go exploring, go adventuring, go into a labyrinth, do what you want, but challenge yourself, do more for yourself. And with Paul doing that, and with Roxy being not Roxy, I keep freaking saying Roxy, with Sylphie being hey, I don't want you to go, Paul actually kind of overhears this and is just okay, I'm noticing something with Sylphie, she's getting too reliant on you, need to do something about that. So Paul comes up with a great plan, because with Rudy, he wants Sylphie to go, but they don't have enough money to cover both tuitions, and again, just he doesn't want to leave Sophie alone. So Paul, in his infinite wisdom, is just like, all right, bet. Rudy, let's fight. And so they have a fight, and like Paul goes in at Rudy like with the intent to kill. So that already alone is just bonkers, okay? But like they have a clash, and Paul is impressed with Rudy's ability right now. He's like, okay, you, like, if I had misstepped at one point, you would have gotten me and all that, but I'm still better than you. I'm gonna knock you out and all that. And he just throws him into a cart with this big titty kitty lady, which that's something from the dub. What was it?
Madam Titty Kitty!
So yeah, he wakes up to this big titty kitty lady, and her name is Ghislaine. She's a tutor for a violent brat in the Citadel of Roa. And Rudy is now heading over there, not only to learn the sword from Ghislaine, who is apparently a sword god in this world. So that's kind of cool. That's neat. But also, he's going to be tutoring this girl at the Citadel of Roa. And after about 5 years, he's going to have enough tuition for 2 people to go to the Renoa School of Magic. So that's kind of cool, because like with this, and we also get Paul's perspective and all that too, because like he notes that, you know, Rudy is a lot like himself when he was younger, where he wanted to go out and explore the world and all that, and just be like, just experience the world and be his own man and all that. And he sees that in Rudy a bit, so he just kind of forces that on him, which on one hand is good, on the other hand is bad. I could see both arguments. I'm kind of in the camp where this was good for Rudy, because like, again, Sylphie was getting so dependent on him to the point where if it continued, and Paul noticed this, that she wouldn't be able to survive if he was gone. So he just forced the split, the separation, and now Rudy is heading to the Citadel to teach a spoiled little brat magic and all that stuff. We do get the extra chapter again with Zenith and her backstory of being, you know, again, being in her home country, leaving at 15 and meeting Paul and all that stuff. And I do like this chapter too, where it's like, it does go a little bit into like Paul as a character, because like, yeah, he's kind of a piece of shit and womanizer and all that stuff, but like the moment that Zenith gets pregnant, he takes ownership, he takes responsibility. He's just like, all right, well, let's get married, let's find a place to live and raise a family, let's do this.
Hey!
And I like too how in this chapter we also got a little bit of Zenith's just mindset when it came to having these kids and all that, because like there was a point where like Lilia was gone, and both Norn and Aisha needed to be fed, and Rudy tried to be like, hey, you know, Lilia's gonna be gone for a while, you're gonna have to feed Aisha. And like there's just a certain bond that came from that, because like again, Zenith starts seeing how Rudy is going to be as a brother, and just how caring he is, and how like he's gonna want to protect all of them. It gives Zenith just more reassurance about Rudy and just how protective he will be. But you know, that was volume 1, so I know I just spouted a lot of nonsense at you guys. I was just like bam bam, thank you ma'am, with all this, but like I feel like that's how it's gonna be with these first few volumes, because I don't want to necessarily say, oh, they're just slow, blah, 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 but like there's gonna be a lot of stuff where it's just like I'll be recounting from my anime mind and all that, and it won't be until like we get to the stuff beyond season 2, I think, or maybe even like I think volume 4 right now currently has like some sections that weren't even in the anime. So yeah, again, I'm gonna leave it off here. Let me know down in the comments below if you're a Mushoku Tensei fan. You know, if you read the light novels, if you listened to the audiobook, if you're anime only, great, welcome. And yeah, this is gonna be a fun journey. This is gonna be something that I'm gonna be looking forward to talking with you guys about. And I have a feeling as we keep going through the series, and as I keep going through each volume, these videos might end up getting longer and longer and all that. So again, thank you guys so much for checking out the video. Again, leave a comment down below, like the video, subscribe if you want more content. Again, weekly content is going to be back on the channel. Apologies for a bit of the inconsistency, but we are back. We're going to get into it. And as always, people, I've been your world champion, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.
I don't need you. Better things are coming on the way. I won't hear from you at all.